Welcome to another episode of Figuring Out. Today, I have a guest who I'm very excited to get on my podcast because there are two reasons. Number one, every friend who I've spoken to, they all are like, bro, you're doing it with Ashish. Bro, you're doing it with Ashish. Everybody got excited as I am today. And I'm talking about all the entrepreneurs who I respect, everyone in the country who have called for the podcast. Everybody got excited for this guest. So that's the reason number one. And reason number two is Ashish is the absolute gold rush for all the aspiring entrepreneurs. He has done it all from the online travel space to the fintech. He has built a startup, he's acquired some, he got an exit. He did every goddamn thing, which I think, Ashish, you have done everything which we read in books in the startup world. There's everything. You have been to the top B schools. You have been the head of the very big company in India. You have been head of Google, and at the same time, you have built your own startup. Then it got acquired, like you had a merger, and then you started another company. You have done everything. Is there anything which you feel like, okay, ab kuch bacha hua hai, Raj, I want to do something else now?
So Raj, I think the thanks for getting me over on this show and on this podcast, and I hope I don't let any of your fellow entrepreneurs down, and the viewers. But thanks and very humbling experience. To your question, I think if you look at my journey at ibibo, we built a very large brand coming out of hundreds of failures. But
Okay.
clearly for me, that is an unfinished business. We did reach certain heights, and from my vantage point, that is an unfinished business, and that's why the birth of InMoney, which is to really, of course, it's in a very different sector, it's solving a very different problem, but from my vantage point, I mean, this should be the culmination over the next many years, and hopefully we are able to produce an institution and create immense value for all constituents.
That
So I think that's the way I look at it. And then one
That's, I
doesn't know
think
the
that's
future, right?
spark, and that's the beautiful thing about all the entrepreneurs, that they're very hungry. They always feel that there's something which didn't happen last time, and I need to finish this business this time, and that's what keeps us going. So before we get into the crux of the podcast, and before we get on to other questions which I have prepared for you, I really want to put this out that people really don't get to pick brains of entrepreneurs like you on everyday basis. It and it puts such a pressure on me to get right insight and right answers from you. But I believe that if you want to have the right answers, you need to ask the right questions. And let's start it with this way, that what is the right question according to you, and how can someone ask right questions?
Yeah, I think so. Firstly, a question and an insight is dependent upon many variables, right? So, what is the timing? Who all are involved in building something or doing something? So, which is what is called as a team. What is the readiness? Who are the other players? So, it's like many variables. So, building a company is very, I would say, like playing a football game. There is a strategy, but you don't really have time to start looking in the sky and thinking about too much of strategies. You're passing the ball. There is a broad outline strategy. You're taking decisions very quickly. You're making many mistakes. Actually, making more mistakes. So,
Yeah.
so I guess I think that asking the right question depends upon the framework. But at an overarching level, what I would like to share is that the only way to start asking the right questions and the only way to start doing something is by doing it, by iterating and not overthinking, and learning, and constantly, you are going to see mini failures, right? And my suggestion to people is that, listen, see those mini failures faster and sooner, then better, and embrace them. Don't get kind of demotivated because of them. because those mini failures are teaching you and you're learning, and that's really the data points, and those are the real questions, right? And those are the real, out of those questions, those insights are coming, that how do I iterate whatever I'm building to take it to the next level. So I just don't think that, there is a kind of a playbook, a set playbook, because let's say the company that I built in the past, I cannot embrace the playbook into in money, because the context is different, industry is different, teams are different, problem and solution is different. There is a very different addressable audience, so everything is kind of different. So the playbook has to be now unique, and hence retrofitting the playbook that I had for Goibibo or a redBus or a PayU I can't just put it. Even between Goibibo, redBus, which is similar businesses, travel, there were unique playbooks. And for payments also, there was a unique playbook. So I think one cannot retrofit playbooks. One cannot say, okay, I'm going to look at these 10 commandments and I'm going to fit into my business. But just one thing I want to say is that the best way to build is learning by doing, which means do it. I just see too many people, they talk about ideas, but they just don't ship them. And even if they're disastrous, it's good, right? But shipping disastrous ideas are great rather than not shipping anything. So ship them, learn from those mini mistakes, failures, celebrate those failures and say, okay, I learned these 4 things from this, and now I'm going to iterate in this way. Again, you'll fail, again, you'll fall. I learned these 2 things and then you keep doing trial and error, and then you start hitting. It's almost like a game of cricket, right? You start batting and the timing is not happening. And then, if you're resilient, by the 10th ball, you get your first run. And then by the maybe 16th ball, you start hitting a 4.
Yeah, that's there. I mean, if you look at it, and that's a major problem. And I see that you are very bullish on procrastination, and you're talking about it right now as well, that you can't learn to play cricket by just talking about it. Like, you need to start doing this stuff. And also, do you think, you talked about a very simple thing, that you need to strategize on point and you need to make decisions right then and there. Do you think that kind of learning comes from your appetite to try sports and be very competitive in the sports world? Or do you think it's something which your parents have instilled you since the beginning? Because I was reading about you as well, and I read somewhere that you are not big fan of democratic decisions when it comes to building a team or taking team decisions. You believe that decisions need to be take instantly because you don't have much time. So does that come from the way you have been brought up, or does that come from your just appetite to play sports?
Yeah, I think a bit of both, because I do love playing sports, and also a bit of my family background. So I think bit of both, and a little bit of my personal nature of, sometimes people say one has to be super patient. I'm not too sure whether that's the right thing, that you need to be overly patient. I think some bit of impatience or some bit of positive paranoia is actually value additive. So I think it comes from multiple things, right? The way I would have grown up, the fact that I like playing sport, the fact that, I'm a little impatient, so one needs to get those decisions done, right? And you know what? A lot of decisions go wrong, right? Even today, I make some wrong decisions. But the trick here is to say very honestly that, listen, I screwed up. This decision was wrong. And now we're going to try something else. Okay, so you do make some wrong calls, you make some wrong decisions. Teams will also make some wrong decisions. But definitely you don't have time to say that let's make a democratically popular decision, which will take 6 months. And that is one of the reasons why very few percentage of companies succeed, because people are just slow to make those decisions, make those calls. So I think it comes from multiple aspects of my personal background.
Speed. So I want to conclude this with speed over everything. That's what you build. That's what you love to say. And there's a very contradictory question, because So you are in a space within money is a personal wealth creation space, right? So, and that's wealth creation is always everywhere I read it's related to patience. And my question is that most of the people who are impatient, they usually make mistakes and want to get money early, and that is where they lose. Because, and also I think not there, most of the people don't even dream about becoming wealthy. All they want is little security in their life. Like they want to have some money, because more money, patience, being extremely rich is always seen as something very evil in our society. Why do you think that India has such a rage against wealthy people? And how an individual who's very impatient and has been conditioned to not dream big, not create wealth, how can that person create wealth?
So I think two very interesting questions. Number one is on so something which is actually something which is not good for this country is that there's huge amount of concentration of money. So only a percent and a half population control 98% of money of this country, or 99%. So that's huge amount of concentration, power differential. So essentially, I think that's not healthy for the country. And there are similar patterns in other parts of the world, but I think in India the skew is a lot more than maybe US.
Yeah.
So obviously there is going to be a bit of I would say frustration, because there has to be more distribution of wealth, which needs to happen. Uh, and I would love to participate in that journey, right? How do we get to do more distribution? I think tech startup ecosystem is a great way for many people to become financially better in their lives, and that distribution of wealth should happen. So that's on the first one. On the second one, on your question of patience. So I think there are two aspects, right? One is your financial life timeline, and the second is wealth creation. So there are actually two different questions, right? So one is financial life timeline, where every individual needs to have certain safety net, what we call as emergency goal. Then that individual needs to plan for his own marriage if he's not married, or if he's married, then marriage of his kids and kids' education, and all of those kind of goals, and house and all of that stuff. And then finally retirement, and then wealth creation, which is essentially participating in giving inheritance to your family, etc., etc. So I think all of this is not just about wealth creation, but it's about the financial timeline. Think of it like your wall on Facebook, right? It starts from a date and goes on to a Y date, and this particular planning is and these are things that we as In Money are doing, right? Which is to help people to at scale plan their financial life and using a lot of data science and machine learning. And the other point here I want to say is that growing money is almost like the eighth wonder of the world, which is compounding. So compounding is the eighth wonder of the world. So more than patience, it's about understanding this concept that compounding is the eighth wonder of the world. And the only way people can achieve this is over a period of time. So that concept needs to be understood, backed by some other concepts like what is that family's risk profile, what is that family's financial life timeline, what should be the asset allocation of that family. So those are a little bit of complicated questions, which we try to as a company deliver by really simplifying the stuff for the users, we try and educate as much we can that, listen, what is that eighth wonder of the world, which is compounding? How does a lakh rupees become 20 lakh rupees over a period of time? But the person has to be disciplined to do that, right? And I guess the impatience needs to be about participating in that financial timeline. That should be the impatience. A lot of people are actually very lazy and have a lot of inertia to participate in that timeline.
Yeah.
And for that, I think people have to be impatient and do it. So that's really my view. And the simile that, compounding of money versus building startups, two different parallels, right? Even a startup needs to deliver power of compounding.
Yeah.
But for that startup to deliver that power of compounding, it needs to deliver humongous value to constituents. And to discover that value, one has to be impatient because one has to be doing trial and error. So that's how
So,
I, connect the dots.
No, that's beautiful because you try to combine, like you try to touch upon every point and you try to correlate them with power of compounding. I just want to make it very, very easy for people who are watching it for the first time. And some, like many of my users and audience, they are around 18, 19, 20. They're just getting started. They don't understand. And that's the right time to get into personal wealth. And I've been using your app since quite a while. And that's why I was very interested to do this podcast because I, I've, I don't say this very often, but I've used many apps, okay? And this is by far the best app I've used. And I'm not saying it just because you're here. I genuinely say it. My entire team knows about it. Okay. And there are a lot of things which I like about it. We can touch on that later. But for everybody who's watching, who's just getting started, you talked about power of compounding. Would you want to touch upon and make it very simple for people that what really compounding is in maybe 60 seconds or 120 seconds, if you can, like, so that they get a brief idea. Ki, oh, acha, ye hota hai, that thing.
Yeah, so I'll do it through an example. Let's say you have 100 rupees,
Okay.
and that 100 rupees typically you leave it in your savings account or you spend it. If you leave that 100 rupees in a savings account, it could give you 3 to 4% of interest rate, which is a linear simple interest rate, which is it could give you 3 or 4 rupees. But if you put that 100 rupees in a disciplined asset allocated, depending upon your risk profile in capital markets, which is equities, ETFs, mutual funds, bonds, etc. So mix of all of that, depending upon your risk, then you could typically end up getting, let's say, 11 to 12%. So not only that 100 rupees becomes 111, but you start earning on 111 also. So even on that 11 that you're earning, and that compounds, and over a period of 10 years, even if you're very, very conservative, that 100 rupees suddenly becomes 1500 rupees. So that is really the simple example. There is obviously a formula which I don't want to confuse but essentially it's like even that returns that you're earning, those returns are further earning for you, and that's what is all getting compounded.
That's what it means. And what do you think? What's better? Because there's always question. I read a lot of articles about it as well. Let's say, if I have 100 rupees, should I put 10 rupees in 10 months or should I put 100 rupees for 10 months? What's the better way to look at it?
Yeah, so I think typically your question is that when should I put the money, right? So my sense is that, and these are things which we as a company deliver to our audience, which is it depends upon what is the market risk presently and what is the market situation. So let's say if the situation in the market is very volatile and the markets are very expensive, very fluffy, then the recommendation would be to average out over 10 months. But if, let's say, the markets are attractive, suddenly, things have kind of got settled, more settled, then it'll be better to put that 100 rupees upfront if you have that 100 rupees.
It all depends on the right timing and
even that 100 rupees that you'll put over 10 months, our system will tell you how to first put the 90 rupees in some kind of a parked instrument, which also will give you better returns, and start putting the 10 10 10 every month or over a 15-month period, depending upon the situation. So
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was telling you, like, this is what I tried with your, okay. I tried to get the premium version of it. I tried to subscribe it, and I went on to ask the professional in your app. There, okay, you know what? I'm putting this much money. I want it in a year. Like, I want it back in a year. And this is what I liked about it, that there were few things which a professional called me up and told me, okay, Raj, if you're going to do it for a year, I'm not allowing you to put it in this kind of market.
Yeah.
And this is not what you get to hear on daily basis.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's I think everything which you said your app is already doing. It's like asset allocation and putting at right money at the right time, looking at the market, using machine learning to do that. Well, that gets me to a point, to a product and startup, because this is something very nice and very unique, because I love it. I'm sure many people must be loving it as well. That you're building startups after startups, and all of them are pretty fantastic products. You're like the ultimate OG for the aspiring entrepreneurs. Like, what does it take to build a startup? Because a lot of my audience wants to build meaningful solutions for the world, and they want to, in return, create wealth for themselves as well. And I want to know how to do that. What does it take to build a startup?
So I think the first is to really, one of the things is that whenever I build something, it has been a personal pain area. It's like the wearer only knows where the shoe pinches. So, getting to feel a big pain. So when I used to try and, let's say, book hotels and air ticket amongst 100, like we were the 100 startup in the travel space. But the 99 guys were not really solving a problem. The 99 guys out there, with due respect, were, there were too many errors while making bookings. There were too many cancellations. You're walking into a hotel, the hotelier is saying, I'm not going to accept your booking. So it was my personal pain area, right? Because we all had to travel efficiently. And I said, listen, can we make this online travel systems more reliable, better execution, better pricing, better selection, more reliable. So that is how we looked at it, and it was a personal pain area. Similarly, the reason why PayU came about is because we used to, at that moment of time, use a third-party payment system for Goibibo. And the payment success rates were really low. And it was terrible, right?
Okay.
I mean, I used to feel like crying to look at customers are coming into your shop, and then imagine somebody's coming into your shop, pushing a cart, and you're chucking the person out of the shop, right? No, I'm not going to allow you to check out, right? And that's how we said, listen, we'll solve this payment problem ourselves. And we launched ibibo Pay. Later on, we rebranded it to PayU.
PayU.
And, and then once we had solved it for us as a merchant, we said, why don't we solve it for others? And then we took PayU out, and now PayU is this independent company, and again, a pretty ubiquitous payment gateway in the nation. Similarly, InMoney is, because of my personal pain area, a lot of offline guys have delivered biased advisory with lots of commission-loaded products. Financial products have been sold to me like normal stock-keeping units, almost like fruits and vegetables. Insurance products have been sold incorrectly, and that's one. Then nobody in the nation had the wherewithal to actually bring all your fragmented expenses and savings and finances all in a single place across your family members. Because at the end of the day, that's your balance sheet, right? That's your that's really your that's really your crux of your finance, right? Then only can there be a planning which can be done on top of it. So nobody, the best of the biggest companies were just interested in making commissions from customers like us and not bothered about bettering our financial life, and not in fact leveraging technology. Most of the financial work at scale is happening on Excels and through some human. And we said that, listen, this is not an Excel problem. This is not a human problem. This is actually a data science problem, because it's so much of data. And also, I reflected that, listen, a lot of people have tried to do PFM, personal finance management, but then their ask is, listen, go and do data entry onto the website. We said, can we automate money management? Can we get people to automatically organize their finances? So a lot of it was driven by, my personal pain areas, and then pain area of people around me. And I think the key is for the entrepreneur to figure out what is that pain area, and actually feel passionate about solving and elevating and solving and or delivering a solution, right? A lot of times when entrepreneurs try to produce a company or a product or an application, it's driven by hearsay, it's driven by just FOMO. But if one was to step back and say, listen, I'm really passionate about solving this problem, these are the 20 problems, and out of 20, maybe 17 I'm going to give up, but 3 I'm going to solve. Then there's going to be magic, because the insights which are going to come out of that entrepreneur and his team is just going to be immense.
Yep. Okay. You said it's something. You talked about something really interesting called FOMO. Okay. And I want to put it out because whether it's startup world, most of the people want to become entrepreneurs because they don't want to miss out on something, right? Like it has now become all of a sudden this glamorous world which everybody wants to taste blood. And all of a sudden we're talking about something. I don't know if you can say no if you don't want to answer. But the major FOMO thing is right now going on with the cryptocurrency market. Would you suggest people to go get into it? Would you personally invest into it or no? I mean, would you want to explore?
So firstly, I think my view is that cryptocurrency is a commodity, just like gold. And if somebody's risk profile is aggressive, that person should have a small percentage or a percentage of his assets or investments into something like cryptocurrency. I think clearly, I think one thing I'm convinced it is a commodity now, just like the way you would buy gold bonds or digital gold. Same way you have cryptocurrency, just like the way you would invest in equity, just like the way you would invest in debt. In my mind, it's not a currency yet; it's a commodity. I think it could definitely become a currency. So that's the first thing. And if somebody's asset allocation is aggressive or even moderately aggressive, a percentage of allocation should go into cryptocurrency. But having said that, given the regulatory framework right now in the country, given the lack of clarity from taxation purpose, etc., one needs to be kind of careful, because you are, as an Indian, making a transaction, which could violate, and you could get harassed by some regulator or tax department. So you got to be careful, right? I mean, I think I would love that there is clarity, and I would definitely love it that the regulators make it very clear what's possible, what's not possible, in what format. For example, today's date, our application enables consumers to invest in US equities, which means people can buy Facebook, Google, Apple, etc., in fractions. But that's regulated because consumers can send their money to invest via the liberated remittance scheme of RBI, and it's like properly bona fide. Banks can do it, etc., etc. So similarly for crypto, there should be a regulatory framework, and I hope that the government really puts that out there very, very fast, because you don't want that as a nation you lag behind, and your citizens don't have an exposure to an important commodity. It's almost like saying, listen, Indians can't buy gold, right? So that's really my view on the topic.
No, now you talked about very good thing that Indians should not lag behind with something because there's no clarity. Okay, we should not lose this advantage, and you are also building startups in the fintech space, right? Which is essentially which helps people get better with their money management, empower them and educate them so that they can get richer in a country like India. Okay. But in our country, if we talk about, there are a lot of strengths as well. There are a lot of young people, we're extremely talented people, and we are known in the world for working hard day in and day out, because that's given. Still, we are considered as like a poor nation. And if you want me to break it down like a simple question, what is that which is keeping Indians poor, and what is stopping them to create wealth? What do you think is that?
I think, so first is that it is we need to coming back to the first question, we need to find ways to do that distribution of wealth, right? It is very, very, Raj,
And how can we do that?
very concentrated, right? I think we need exactly the stuff that you are doing, encouraging people to start up, right? And more people need to start up in this nation. More and more engineers who are coming out of their college need to essentially join startups, need to join need to not join TCSs of the world, with due respect, right? They need to and also not perhaps even join Microsofts of the world, right? They need to be part of the creator economy. They need to start creating, so either as entrepreneurs or starting up with other entrepreneurs and then becoming entrepreneurs. So I think that's one thing which definitely needs to be done. The other thing that we need to do is to really become disciplined executors.
Okay, what do you mean?
So in my previous company, one of our main investors is a Chinese company called Tencent. So I would go to Shenzhen very often.
Okay.
Tencent is a $600 billion
Yeah, I
I know.
market cap company, etc., etc. So I would observe, what's happening there. This is like many years ago. And one of the things that I noticed is that the technology workforce is hugely disciplined. Like they execute things on time, and they are like very, very disciplined, right? Disciplined in managing their projects and completing their projects. Us as Indians, we lack that discipline, which is visible the way we drive on the roads, right? That discipline, right? Suddenly, we would like to take that shortcut, which is very hazardous, and it ends up into disasters. So that mental discipline in our head, it's a hard one. We need to get that, and that's also reflective. If you look at the top apps in this country, they are we have a bit of colonization. If you look at it, truly made in India apps are still very, very few in the top deck of top 50 apps or consumer products in the country. So I think really second thing I would really encourage people should get disciplined execution is very, very important, right? With the notion of time that, listen, I need to put something out there next week by this date, which I think, I'll be honest, and this may be a very unpopular words coming out of me, but there is that lack of discipline that I've seen, which we just need to improve.
No, that's there. Like Indians, there's also one thing we're known for. It's like we don't be in. So whenever I talk to my friends in the Western world, every time they're like, we need to get on a Zoom call at 3, and they say, bro, 3 our time, not your time. So usually our 3 starts at 3:30 or 3:20, and that's bad. I think we need to work on that. What do you think is a major difference between, because you said not the biggest of the biggest MNCs of the world, you need to start working with startups in order to get in the creator economy. What do you think is the biggest difference? Why do you say so? What's that one difference which makes you say that people should join startups more than this?
Sorry, people should join startups more than going into a more predictable.
Yeah, more than going to the more predictable world, or better like MNCs or anything of that sort. Why do you think?
To be honest, in a very structured, large multinational or a large software service shop kind of a environment, in a startup, the individual's learning is 100 times more than in a more predictable world. So what an individual will learn in 6 months' time, it will take him 6 years to learn in, let's say, a more predictable environment or a more structured environment. And the contribution that individual will make, which means when he ship a product, ship a feature, and see that the consumers are benefiting from it, he'll be able to derive that feeling of impact right there. Whereas in a more structured environment, one of my favorite questions when I ask people, okay, what did you do in the last 5 years? You know what? Many people still struggle who are not part of the startup environment. They say, my job was to do this. I did a great job of doing quality assurance, as an example. But I said, that was your job. But what impact did you create? And if you ask this question, a lot of people struggle with the same. You ask the same question to a person who worked at startup, he will rattle, I did these 20 things which helped conversion rates to increase, so many new users came to the application, so much of revenue increased, so much of churn reduced. So everybody will have the right kind of answers, but a person coming from the structured world will struggle and will realize that actually he spent his entire life not actually truly impacting the lives of the people.
That's there because I'm now thinking that okay, people who have joined me in my company and they have come from the biggest of the biggest companies from the nation, they all have said the same thing, that the only difference which we have here is we feel that we did something, and just because we did this particular thing, x amount of impact happened, or this is how the numbers went up, or this is why we made a mistake. So I think that makes a lot of sense, because that also gives them a sense of authority and sense of accountability on themselves. So they learn a lot more things. That's there. But from the individual growth perspective, because a lot of people struggle with answering this one question, I'm sure they must be struggling with growing themselves up as well. So if you were given a chance that you can only read 3 books, or to grow yourself, you were only allowed to read 3 books in your lifetime, what would be those 3 books?
Difficult question. I'm not a big fan of reading books, honestly. Okay, but
Okay.
so I think,
So instead of reading books,
yeah,
if you're not a big fan of reading books, what would be 3 things an individual can do to grow themselves up?
yeah, I think definitely, and you don't need to read books to learn, right? You can definitely read. So definitely the individual. So one of the most important thing is curiosity. So people should surely read a lot. That's very very important. And ask the right questions and then research those. Research those aspects. So for example, when I was thinking of personal finance management back in 2018, brainstorming, at that time I did read a lot about what is happening in the personal finance management space across the world. Who are the top startups in US, who are the top startups in China in this space besides India. Went down to reading a lot about companies like Charles Schwab, Wealthfront, Betterment, all of these kind of companies. Went very very deep, played around with their applications, read a lot about the kind of algorithms they use, their design philosophy. So you typically immerse yourself and you research the topics very very deeply. What are the business models that play out, and so on and so forth. So I think definitely reading a lot is very very important for people to constantly evolve themselves. The second thing that I would love to say is testing. So I love this whole live experiences, right? So let's say when you want to get to know about something, you'll read, but how do you experience it, right? So it could be an enterprise product, or it could be a consumer facing product, it could be a tangible product, or it could be an intangible product, right? It could be a mobile app, it could be a mobile phone, it could be a IoT device. So the second thing is testing and learning by hands-on experiencing these things. That learning is just unparalleled, because when you truly start playing around, for example, if somebody is interested in building a mental wellness application, then that person should definitely look around and download mental wellness applications across the world in different languages, if he or she is able to find, or if it is a very unique idea, then what are the similes, what are the parallels of it, right? And just play around and definitely test. So that's the second. Third is, I would say, network. You learn a lot from networking, communicating, engaging socially, formally, informally, right? So I think these are the three, and then that's where you also discover, right? Those networks help you to discover and learn even more, right? There are lots of feedback loops that, hey, Raj, I have this idea, and I'm thinking about this, and Raj will say, I have this idea, and then those notes that get exchanged in that network, the learnings are quite unparalleled. So I think three things that the person should do: research. I would actually not even say read, research, because if he researches, he's obviously passionate about the topics, right?
That makes sense.
If he's a technologist and he works on Python, he needs to research a lot on Golang. And then second is to test, to actually do MVPs of using Golang, right? And third is then network in that community of Golang and Python or whatever, right? So that's the way. These are three very critical things that a person should do for really immense amount of learning.
No, that's there. And you talked about networking, right? And I'm sure that you must have came across couple of people. You must have had a crazy network across the globe. If I want to ask you this, it's just from personal curiosity, that if there was a new startup which you wanted to start and you don't know which industry, you don't know anything, you just want to start a new company, who would be the three founders or three people who you feel like, okay, they will be my dream team with me? Because you have networked with, you know who's of the world, you have networked with the right people. Have you ever came across three people or who you can bet on, like, yeah, bus, these are the three people I want? And I want it from the startup world from India, because you must have had friends as well.
I wouldn't. Obviously, there are not three. There are about 8 or 9 names. There is a lot of talent, and it's very, very talented bunch of entrepreneurs out there in India, and that's increasing, right? I mean, if you go 10 years ago, you would have asked me this question, I would have had no answer. But this is obviously increasing. But it'll be kind of politically incorrect for me to name because of many issues and reasons. But I would say there would be about at least 7 or 8 really, really strong entrepreneurs that I would love to work with somewhere in the future. So absolutely.
But now that I've asked this question, okay, let's make it easy from the user's perspective. I don't want you to take 3 names. I want you to talk about 3 skills or three things about a person which really intrigues you and you feel that, okay, this is why this person should be on dream team. What are that? Like, what do you look in the talent?
Curiosity.
Yeah.
Energy. And problem solving.
Problem solving approach, like in life.
So let's solve. Like, I mean, if you today's date look at, a lot of people talk about problems. A lot of people say, they say, and they articulate those problems really well. They will tell you, Raj, the challenges are these 5, but very few people give solutions, right?
Yeah.
And I think you want in your team not just scribbers and talking about the problems. We can see the problems, right? For sure. And of course, you need to be smart enough to even articulate the problems. But what you want in your team is people who have high, solutioning, and that solution may not be correct, but at least there is an approach to try and solve, right? So solutioning, high energy, right? Because
how do you get high energy? Because I've heard this so many times from so many people. What is your personal mantra to stay high energy, like be extremely energetic? Or what should an individual do? Like, just eat, try it, sleep well and work out? Or what is that energy mean?
Yeah, see, it's a bit tacit. Like, right now I'm talking to you, Raj. Obviously, I can say Raj is a high energy person, right? And it's a mix of many things: the way you're talking, the way you're approaching your questions, the way what you are doing in life, etc., right? I don't think, again, there is a single magic bullet to say this person, or this is the metric to say that this person is high energy, low energy. You can kind of feel it typically, but definitely, just like the way you can feel high energy, you definitely don't want a low energy person in your team. So even if a person, so the way I look at it is that even if a person, so let's make a metric, right? Like, let's say y-axis is energy level.
Okay.
So top at the plus of y is very high energy. Bottom is low energy.
Low.
and let's say x-axis is skill, brilliance and skill.
Okay.
So plus is very, very, very high skill, and minus is very, very, very low skill and brilliance, right? So let's say there is an individual which is really high skill, but very low energy, which means he's at the bottom right quadrant.
Yeah.
You don't want that person in your team. So this person is like super brilliant, like he's like 100x of Raj's brilliance, for example. But this guy is very, very low energy. He drains energy. He's an energy sucker. You don't want such individuals in your team. In fact, it's better to have a person with slightly lower skills,
But with little better energy.
but very high energy, right? So almost like on the not on the top right quadrant, but let's say if you were to move the dot more closer to the y-axis at the top, so it's slightly lower skill and high energy, because skill, brilliance, all of that comes as the person executes and learns and experiences things. So that's really, that's really my
That's how you identify.
yeah. If I were to put a more kind of a predictable structure to it.
Yeah. Okay, now that we're talking about Raj, and so I heard one thing from a friend, maybe it's wrong, but I heard that you're not very big on the influencer marketing game. Like you don't believe in it. So why do you think it's not worth the money? Why do you think that? Because everybody's spending tons on influencer marketing, right? And the creator economy is building up big. Why do you think it's not worth the money? Why do you think it's not good?
Yeah, I never said so. So I guess if you look at my previous startup, we didn't have the influencer ecosystem, right?
Okay.
But if you look at the current startup, we've still not really gone and accelerated to make the app ubiquitous, because it's we focused on first building the core value of the product to make the system better and better. And now, as we speak, we are now kind of going to step up, and definitely what my marketing and growth team tells me, that influencer marketing is definitely one of the important pieces. Having said that, we need to obviously be careful in attracting the right audience, because the application serves the purpose for an addressable audience, right? And not perhaps for another audience. So we got to be, obviously, we have to calibrate that as we go into investing behind influencer marketing. But I clearly, what we've seen is that when influencers have talked about us on social media, and this is without us going through a formal influencer marketing program, they've talked about us as customers, normal customers, without us, asking them to do so via a formal arrangement. We have definitely benefited, Raj. But we are obviously wanting to, and I'm sure I would definitely request the team to connect with you to get the code right? Because we definitely don't want the wrong audience to kind of download the app, because they'll not find it beneficial, and then they won't like it, we won't like it, right? So we need to get that marriage right.
Nice. Okay. And so you talked about, this builds me an instant question. Okay. I was going to the last question, but I just want to fit in another question quickly, because you talked about reaching to the right people, right? You want your marketing team or your team to reach out to the right influencers. It's reaching to the right people. And every time when we ask an entrepreneur or somebody who's successful that how do we become successful, or what a young person should do, they always talk about passion, curiosity, hard work, discipline. These are very individualistic things. But one of the most essential elements is that people, you cannot grow much without having right set of people in life, right? So what do you think? What should be the ground approach for all of us, for young people who are aspiring to get somewhere in the life? What should be the right approach or the ground rules for approaching people? And if there's something like giving something and asking something for return, are there any ground rules, or what should I do? How do I approach people?
Yeah, I think typically, let's say, So I guess one has to be quite, I would say, when you're approaching people, it has to be a lot of people when they approach people, there is a lot of vagueness, right? There's a lot of vagueness and ambiguity. There's already so much of clutter in the world, right?
Yeah.
Today's date, when a salesperson approaches me, he doesn't come to the point. He will go long-winded,
Right.
and there's already so much of ambiguity and so much of clutter in the world, right? Like you're being bombarded with so much of content from everywhere. So essentially, when you are approaching someone, you need to figure out what would you say to that person in 10 seconds, which matters to the person and which he is able to understand. It's almost like the grandmother test, right? So if you were to tell your grandmother something, she should be able to understand, and that too in 10 to 20 seconds, or maybe at max 60 seconds. And it should not be this long 20-minute, 30-minute monologue, and in the last 2 minutes, you finally coming to the crux. So you want to avoid that. So it's almost like a headline, right? Like a headline tells you everything, right? A headline and a sub-headline tells you everything. So you want to say that.
Wow.
That's one of the that's one of the most powerful thing I've heard. It's very simple thing that you must be able to ask that person in 10 seconds instead of 20 minutes. The grandmother test. That's so true. I'm just thinking about it that so many times I've lost an opportunity because I was over exaggerating the situation and I wasn't on point. And by the time I came to the point, the person was already not interested in me and they just left.
Yeah, because
That's quite
too much of clutter, right, in a person's life, too much of content, and people in general. If you look at the insight, is that in general, people minds are lazy, right, and they don't, unless there's something super urgent, they don't want to put to it, right? So hence you want to go with the assumption, yes, minds are lazy. How do you get in the concept, very very quickly?
And sometimes you don't have a specific agenda when you reach out to people. Okay. Sometimes, let's say, if I genuinely meet you in a networking event or I see you in a party, I just want to reach out to you and become friends because I think you are somebody who I aspire. Like, I think you're a man of value. So at that time, what should a person do? Because there's no specific agenda. I don't have a specific question or something to ask and be like, you know what, let's build this startup. I don't have that.
That setting is very different. There, the expectations are nil, right? Expectations on either party in a social setting is nil. And it does not need to be transactional. It doesn't need to be. You don't need to do the grandmother test in that situation because the expectations are nil. But let's assume that you are approaching someone and saying that, listen, I have an idea and I have a proposal. That you want to keep it very very specific. But in a social setup, in a networking event, etc., it's more about getting to know. For example, what do you do and what do I do, kind of a situation, and the expectations are nil, and that's why sometimes networking, in an informal networking setups, it's good, right? Because expectations are nil. You're not expecting conclusion out of it, and then both sides are actually deciphering in a very tacit way what could be the tangible or intangible value both sides could perhaps bring to the table. But that's not the core agenda.
Yeah, that's there. Well, this gets me to the last segment of it. It's very personal and I'll be very selfish here. So my last question is divided actually into three parts because I do a lot of the rule of three in my life. And so the question is, where do you see the biggest opportunity for a creator like me in today's world? If you were a creator instead of me, where do you see the biggest opportunity?
So creator like you as Raj Shamani or any creator?
Raj Shamani specifically, I would say any creator, but I'll be selfish here.
So look, I think for you the biggest opportunity is perhaps what you are doing, which is which is essentially democratizing knowledge sharing on various topics via various media vehicles. So you are the new digital TV. Okay. Uh, I think one opportunity for you to perhaps create, Raj, could be also to uh, create many more Rajas. So create a playbook to create many more Rajas in the nation, because typically there is a lot of talent in this country, and how can you start becoming a platform? I think that could be an interesting opportunity for you, because on one side you have consumers of content, and on the other side you have creators. And let's say you want to scale. So one way to scale, and you got the playbook right? What I have read about you're getting the playbook right. You know how to get the reach, you know how to put interesting content on Instagram and YouTube, etc. So now, how do you scale this? So can you, besides Raj Shamani as the show, can you also become a platform, given that you have a playbook? Perhaps use technology to become a platform, because if you look at it from a opportunity point of view, you have distribution via YouTube, Instagram, and maybe hundreds of other sources. You have the playbook of how to produce, and on the other side there could be a lot of talent supply, right? So how do you get that talent supply on your platform, and your platform is hooked to these multiple sources? So I think that could be a very, very interesting opportunity. And of course, you already perhaps have been monetizing, and there could be many monetization ways which you could then extend to this network that comes onto your platform of hundreds and hundreds of talent.
Nice. I've never thought about it in this way. I always wanted to empower more people to do what I am doing, but I never thought of building a platform like this where I could help people with the kind of playbook which I've made for myself by testing and experiencing over the years.
Yeah,
That's
and not, I'm just saying, not even playbook in the sense, when I say platform, it's the platform. Like, for example, right now, the platform comprises this conversation between you and me. There is a recording going on, there's a camera going on, there's a format, and then you will obviously edit this, and then you will package it and put this. So there could be a lot of talent in various categories, but they may not typically know what this playbook is. I'm not too sure if others are doing this, but I think it's a massive opportunity.
Absolutely. And okay, you kind of answered my second question, the second part of the question as well, but I'm still going to go up front and ask, like, based on our conversation, whatever you know about me, what do you think I should improve or I should do in order to go from X to 10X now?
Yeah, so 10x I already told you, right? I mean, I think
Yeah. What should I improve, like on a personal level? That's what I wanted to ask.
so that's something which I'll have to Raj reflect a little more. But if your question is how do I become 100x, my recommendation would be a platform approach, and a tech-driven platform which invites millions of people to become influencers on one hand, and of course it churns, and then it gets the best and provides a platform to get them to produce, create content, and a one-stop shop for enabling these influencers to distribute their content, and one-stop shop for them to also monetize from you. So I think that's the big idea, a startup idea. While you continue to do what you're doing, right? But that's like the 100x.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it. I get what you're trying to say. And it is a massive opportunity when you think about it, because it's just getting started. And we are going to replace, I think that's what I feel. Every creator individually has the power to replace the traditional media. So I think
So
that's
I
a
think
massive
the traditional
opportunity.
media is gone, in my view. So traditional media is completely gone. And there is a huge demand for good quality content. And I think that's still very underserved. Good quality content is underserved. And I think it can only happen if there are more creators participating. And you could be the platform for creators for supplying a lot of content. One, not just podcasts, but multiple kinds of content. webisodes, blah blah blah, right? So you could be that platform since you know you crack the puzzle. Now it's about scaling, right?
Yeah.
It is. Well, the last part of the question, thank you so much for doing this. But the last part is in 10 seconds, the headline of this entire conversation is how and when are we going to get to the point where I get to compete and beat you at the squash court?
You can play with me on Saturday.
Okay, next time I'm in Delhi, I'm gonna hit you on Saturday. I'm gonna make sure, and we're gonna having this match. Thank you so much, Ashish. Thank you so much for doing this. I genuinely loved the conversation. I was really excited to do this, and I got so many insights. I'm sure everybody who would be listening to this would also love to hear what you have. Is there any ending point you want to share it with the users for everyone? Is there anything you want to share?
Yeah, I just want to say that just do it.
Just do it. Here's signing off with the Figuring Out with Ashish Kashyap. Thank you so much.